Daily Detroit is brought to you in part by Castalia Cocktails, a great spot for a night out, a drink after dinner, or a date. Their Fairy Tales menu, brand new for the season, examines beloved children's stories such as The Little Mermaid and The Jungle Book, and the darkness within these tales, all properly paired with their sfumato fragrances. And of course, there are alcohol-free versions of each of the 8 special cocktails. The whole Castalia menu both tells you how boozy a drink is, and there is a full non-alcoholic lineup, taking care to give you a top-notch sensory experience no matter how you'd like to drink. An intimate bar with less than 20 seats, Castalia is on the garden level on 2nd Avenue at West Alexandrine in Detroit's beautiful Midtown. They're open to all Wednesdays through Saturdays from 5 to 11 p.m., with the possibility for unique experiences like private events and menu tastings anytime with a reservation. You can learn more at CastaliaCocktails.com. That's CastaliaCocktails.com. Make sure to support the businesses that support us and stop on by. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. It is a drippy Friday, December 1st, 2023. I am Jer Stays, and joining me from west of Woodward is...
It's Devon O'Reilly. It's a great day to be indoors talking to you on a podcast.
It's funny, the weather lately, because I think about this thing, and this is one of my tips for people who move to Michigan or Metro Detroit. It was 45 degrees yesterday, and I was working on...
Balmy.
Yeah, balmy. And I was up late working with engineer Randy on the new studio. So yes, cat's out of the bag. Finishing some things up, and got out of the car, and I'm like, do I need a jacket? No. The reason being is that if I get a jacket now at 45, I will have no more tools left as it gets colder.
Just prepping your body accordingly.
Yeah, especially if you're moving here from a warmer climate or something. You know, you need to be able to adjust yourself into having multiple layers or different coat options. Because if you need a heavy coat at 45, what's going to happen when it's 20?
Yeah, I broke out my heaviest Carhartt coat one time this past week, and that was for a nighttime walk when it was freezing. And that was, I think, justified because my wife and I looked at the kind of feels like temperature, and it was 22 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
That was legit.
For sure. We're going to talk about some fun stuff, a little bit of news or conversation that was made, and just kind of catch up because, Devon, it's been a while. We missed last week.
Yeah, we missed last week. The Black Friday show didn't quite happen. I think we were both in a little bit of a turkey Thanksgiving hangover, but that just means we have more stuff to talk about. And I've been a few places.
So where have you been?
The one I really want to lead off with, because I'm excited about it, and you'll kind of know why as I explain it, and anyone who listens will know why. The David Whitney Building, one of my favorite buildings in the city, has always had, since it opened, this WXYZ bar concept off to the side there. It's like their lobby bar, but it's kind of off to the side. It didn't really fit the vibe of the David Whitney Building.
Well, the WXYZ, when I've traveled, that's in other places. It's like their generic bar.
Right, exactly. So it had to be a WXYZ bar because that's what's in all of the Aloft Hotel brands. It was fine. I mean, it served a purpose. I liked going there. It never got too crowded. Had a nice outdoor patio. But the David Whitney Building itself is going through kind of a rebrand of the hotel concept. So they're becoming an autograph collection. So that means they have to raise the bar, and they are now able to bring that into kind of historic context with the rest of the building. And they've redone the whole check-in space there in the David Whitney Building in that beautiful, beautiful atrium and lobby. And now they have this really, really nice library bar, basically. And it really harkens back to I would say a lumber baron's study or living room, which is right in my sweet spot of the type of bar that I'm looking for. It really calls out David Whitney. There's a portrait of him there. There's a mantle, a hearth. There's going to be a fireplace that they're putting in. They're still putting in the finishing touches. And it's just going to be a great old lumber bar. Think of even a chop house vibes, Buell bar vibes, that sort of thing, with a lounge area, piano player. Very, very, very classy and very befitting of the David Whitney Building.
I have but one question, Devon.
Yes.
Is there fine Corinthian leather?
Oh, yes, Jerry. You could sit yourself in a fine Corinthian leather chair. Now, I don't know if it's Corinthian, but it's quite fine leather.
That is a joke that harkens back to the Chrysler days and that whole thing. I think it was the 70s that came out.
Cordova, designed in the rich traditions of Chrysler excellence. Traditions expressed by luxurious seating, available even in fine Corinthian leather.
It would be great if they had just a little section of fine Corinthian leather as like an inside joke.
Well, you have to go there and check it out, and I encourage people to do so. I was actually there a few times in the past week or so. I poked in when it first soft opening, and then parade day. We walked down there with my daughter, and we kind of hung out in the warmth of the David Whitney Building for a little bit, and then we popped right outside, and it was a good place to have warmth, have a restroom nearby, and be able to watch the Thanksgiving Day parade. So it offered some great views for that. I'm sure it'll be really popular. I would just encourage people to go check it out. It doesn't have like an extensive menu. It's one of those like, you got a really good cocktail person behind the bar, ask for whatever you're looking for and they'll make it for you, but don't expect to be greeted with a long menu of different cocktails.
Now, I know there was a lot of excitement when a loft came to this property, but I mentioned I traveled, right? And I've stayed in lofts. I've always thought the Aloft brand wasn't quite the right mix for the David. I feel like Autograph makes, and I remember it from my previous lives, but like, I feel like Aloft just didn't, it was fine, but it didn't seem to like sync up completely with the grandeur that is the David Whitney.
Absolutely. And so that is changing. It's going to be an Autograph Collection hotel. They're undergoing the rebrand. Also good news for next year that we'll get to talk about is the restaurant Presley's. So, we've talked a long time about how there's never been a real restaurant, a food and bev concept along Woodward in that amazing space with all the windows at the other side of the David Whitney Building. And they're going to open a restaurant, Presley's, and bar and kitchen. That's going to be really cool. And so that's more to come on that, but they'll have yet another concept that'll be befitting of the building. Jared, where have you been these days, this past week or so?
It should surprise no one that I was getting coffee.
It shouldn't, no.
That coffee is in a very familiar space with a different name and a different crew running it, but there's some homage there. It's called Alba, and it's in the old Astro space.
I was going to say, I'm glad you checked this out. This is why we can get full coverage of Detroit, Jared, because that's one of those things. I knew that Astro had closed, and it was such a great spot, and I was really looking forward to what was going in there. So we haven't talked about this yet. I'm hearing this for the first time too. I'm very interested to hear how it's different and similar to Astro.
First, to get started, shout out to listener Danielle, who was like, hey, is it open? Da, 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 da. I'm like, all right, I got to go check this thing out. First off, you need to know that some of the people that were connected are connected to Milwaukee Cafe and Kiesling are part of it. The cafe is founded by David Valdez. He used to manage Milwaukee. As listeners will know, it's a place I've frequented. And then Carlo Liberti is a co-owner of Milwaukee and Kiesling. So this is like another concept out of this. The idea is kind of a Mexican-Italian fusion. You go in there as a multi-year Latin student. I appreciate like the faux Roman menu board that kind of has the almost like a mosaic pattern to it. I really enjoyed that. It's a minimal space right now. Again, this is soft open. Let's be very clear. Like I'm looking at this going, okay, there's still some shelves that need to be filled and all that kind of stuff. Like that's part of the game. But basically, it's good. They've got a whole variety, all the basics you're going to want. The prices at this point, I think, are pretty decent. There's sitting spaces. And I have so many good memories of this space from when I used to live in North Corktown and walk on down with my dog and like just I'd tie up my dog and early in the morning and then go in there and get a coffee and then we'd walk back or they'd bring one out to me or whatever. It's such a great amenity to have there and it's good to have this like kind of high-end thing. I had a oat milk latte. It was solid. Service was fast. I am excited to see this get another life. And although there is a lot of coffee in Corktown at this point, I mean, we've mentioned Lucky, we've mentioned some other things like that's part of the vibe now. This place I think has the potential to really stand out, especially because they're trying to have like a real idea behind it, being that like Mexican, Italian inspired and drawing on those experiences. And the name itself means sunrise or dawn in both Italian and Spanish. So like there's a cool little like flavor to it.
Not named after Jessica.
Oh, that would be pretty funny. Does she have any ties to Detroit?
No, I don't know what she's up to these days. I think she has like a natural products line, I think she's doing well for herself.
I'm sure she is.
I think, Jared, that there's not too many coffee shops because obviously Astro closed, so there was subtraction, and now we're just kind of adding back. I like the number of coffee shops in Corktown because that Michigan Avenue stretch can kind of go on for a while. And so you kind of have now, you've got something on the west end with Alba, you've got something on the far east end with James Oliver, you've got kind of Lucky a little bit in the middle. I would say that there's not too many at all. There's just a great amount of them. And this one sounds like a really good concept. Did you get any feel as far as food program, if they're going to be doing any more substantial foods going forward?
Super soft opening. So
Okay.
I'd say if they happen to be open, go check them out. And it's a cool thing to poke into and watch how it grows and evolves over time. Now, I know that there is a light food program at Milwaukee, but it's very much croissants and brownies and things like that. It's not often. Now, they'll have people come in and whatever, but it's like not a full food program over there.
I was also in the neighborhood this past week, popping in a similar scenario of I had kind of heard about a place and wanted to check it out. You know, we've talked about the Godfrey Hotel. There's the IO, the rooftop there. Jerry, you and I were at the ribbon cutting together. One of the concepts that wasn't open yet was their main anchor concept, which was going to be high-end American brasserie called Hamilton's. And that apparently, unbeknownst to, I guess, us, that actually opened. I couldn't find a website for them.
Really? I thought that was going to be a little bit farther down the line.
The website just says that it's going to open later this year or end of 23 and no Instagram handle to speak of. So that was one of those things, Jared, where just the Devon Explorer and me was like, well, I'm just going to go pop in. I want to go have lunch here because let's find out. And lo and behold, popped in. They were open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's a really cool spot. I mean, they clearly carried the Godfrey vibe over as far as design into Hamilton's. You get a lot of like Art Deco-y, velvet, the brass. You know, I don't want to say it's over. Like we're doing a lot of this concept these days, but it's popular. The kind of marbly bar countertop. So there's a bar, there's a seating area. They've got pretty good menu, pretty substantial for lunch menu, shareables, sandwiches, salads, a little bit heartier stuff, mostly American. I'm not picking up any kind of particular vibe. It was perfectly fine. Checked out the dinner menu. They have everything from steaks to seafood. They have some cocktails, a wine list. Beer, if you're going there for beer, it didn't look like they had any taps. I think they just had a bottle selection. So if you're a beer drinker, maybe not the best place for you, but I was pleasantly surprised. And yeah, I think they're going to do something a little more grand as far as the opening down the road. But for now, if you're in Corktown, you're traveling down Michigan Avenue, you can pop in there for any meal.
When you say Devon the Explorer, I couldn't help but think of Dora the Explorer, which I'm sure you're going to get more familiar with as you're a fresh father.
Yes, my daughter might start to very much take to Dora the Explorer as her father likes to fancy himself an urban explorer.
I want to mention some place that I plan on going, which is Noel Night. Now, if you're catching this a few days later, you missed out on the fun, but on Saturday, December 2nd, which is this Saturday, tomorrow night as we're recording this, is Noel Night, 49th edition. So many great places open up from the DIA all the way down through the Cultural Center and Midtown. There's that shopping district on Canfield. You can stop by a lot of great local Detroit businesses. I know that Monger's Provisions for a while is doing a thing with the sandwich guy, Carlos Parisi. They're doing like a special sandwich. I know that, there's like Sfumato and Castalia, which of course you've heard at the beginning of this show, and thank you for your support. You got that strip on Canfield, Bon, City Bird, all that. Like, there's just so many things. I think it's a real magical night, and I really hope that everything holds together because I can't think of a better night in winter in Detroit than Noel Night.
Yeah, that area in Midtown and the university area really, really comes alive. The streets are full of people. There's all sorts of activations, things going on, places to check out, small businesses especially. I mean, it's a great opportunity for small business to show off. The weather for being December 2nd looks like it's not going to be too bad. So I don't think you'll have to worry about rain or any kind of incredible cold. Jerry, you might have to break out the next level of coat, but I think you'll be fine.
I did notice in our Slack that you had procured a local booze or something. And although I am like not in the booze mood, and I know that you may not be drinking it at this moment, I wondered if you would share it with folks.
Absolutely, Jerry. I mean, hey, I hope you get in the booze mood soon.
We are recording this at 10:30 in the morning.
But it's a Friday show.
Okay.
So
Okay. Fair.
I think there is still some available, actually. I've seen it out. I actually saw it at Westbourne Market. They've started to do this more often, or every year, annually. Detroit City Distillery does this collaboration with Bees and the D honey that is obviously locally sourced. The honey comes from hives that are on top of buildings in the city of Detroit. And they basically take their Detroit City Distillery bourbon, which is already good in its own right, and they rest it in these raw honey barrels for a period of time. And they come up with this really great bourbon that actually, it sounds like, in talking with them a little bit more, it sounds like this is going to be something where you're going to be able to get it year round. So good news, if you didn't catch it, it had been an annual release, but it will be going forward. It'll be one of kind of their staple products. And it's really nice. It's really smooth. I want to remind people, especially those who are drinking booze or don't drink it as much, this isn't like a mixed drink. So it's not like you're just going to pour this and it's going to taste like a bourbon flavored with honey, like it's some Stoli beverage. This is like it's still bourbon. So you get a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of warmth, but you still want to mix this in cocktails unless you're someone who wants to drink their bourbon straight.
Okay. Yeah, because I think at first blush, when you see something like honey or you see something sweet, there's some people who get really excited about that. Then there's other people who are like, is this going to be something that I used to drink when I was like 21 years old?
Yeah, it's not sugary. It's not sweet at all. Now, what they also recommend or say you can do is they also sell, which is interesting, the reverse. So they sell bottles of honey that have been aged in bourbon barrels, in their bourbon barrels. So you can actually get Detroit City Distillery honey. And what you do is, basically, you make yourself a little old fashioned. You can use the bourbon. You can use some of the Detroit City Distillery honey as your sweetener for the old fashioned, and then some bitters. There's your simple cocktail that you can make with it. And they actually sell a bottled version of the old fashioned if you don't want to go through the work of making it yourself, although it's a pretty easy cocktail to make.
All right. Let's get into a little bit of a more, it's a serious story in that it's important. I would say it's timely because it came up at a Detroit Free Press Breakfast Club series where they did an interview with Dan Gilbert. As we mentioned on the show, he's getting to be more and more visible. And one of the key things out of a list of stuff, and I'm just going to focus on this one because I know a lot of listeners are interested in it. Gilbert talked about a bigger vision for transit. I'm just going to go ahead and quote something here. I'll link to this in the show notes about regional cooperation in transit. The more groups that get behind doing regional systems, the more of a chance we have of the feds funding it. Just think about how great that would be if you have lines going to Metro Airport, up Woodward, all the way to Pontiac and going west and then going east. It would be unreal. It would be a different city. And again, it would give us the ability to attract more talent here. The kids today, they don't want to drive cars. They'll take a bike or they'll take a train. Maybe they take a bus. They brag about not having cars, actually, which I think is interesting. I think it's, true, especially with younger talent. I've noticed some of the shifts lately as somebody who's lived in the city a while. It's an interesting thing to see him get behind it as he kind of gets more into and re-entered into like the having a voice circuit, if you will. He always did, but after the stroke, he kind of took some time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad he's making this something that he's speaking out about because it is so important. And I think he is right in the sense that from a talent attraction retention standpoint, a lot of the kids who are coming from colleges or, grew up in other parts of the country, especially like the coasts, they're used to a transit friendly environment, wherever they went to school. And so coming to Detroit, they're looking for that. On the other flip side of things, the costs of owning a car are going up, particularly in the city of Detroit, but even in the close suburbs. It's a flex, a brag, whatever you want to say, but it's also a money saver if you can live and make your life work without having a full-time car. Some folks share a car, whatever, but that takes a lot of cost out of things. So certainly something that needs to happen. I think, Jer, that realistically, where are we at? Macomb County, I'm sorry if you're listening from Macomb County. Macomb County has been pretty clear from a leadership standpoint that they are not going to do anything on regional transit. They're going to let Wayne and Oakland and Washington act first, and they'll follow behind. Mark Hackle has kind of said, basically, my constituents don't want this right now. This isn't a priority for them. And so as far as transportation going east, you're not going to see it, not anytime soon. Now, what you can see is this corridor between Detroit and the airport. I think that is moving along. I think you will see something that connects Detroit and the airport and then, maybe out to Ann Arbor and then going north. Again, Oakland County has become very amenable to transportation and mass transit. So, you definitely will, I think, see something going up Woodward or just more activity, more investment, I should say. I'm not trying to say they're going to be train tracks tomorrow, but you'll see more investment going up Woodward through Royal Oak and Birmingham and probably even up to Pontiac. Again, when you get to very northern Oakland County, I think a lot of those communities are not really for it. They don't see the need. But I think going forward, Jared, it's going to be this interest-based, needs-based model. And I think those two corridors, those two lines of transit are going to get a lot of investment. Hopefully also not just public, but if Dan, wants to put his money where his mouth is, I think people certainly would be happy about that and maybe help to fund some of this.
Couple of thoughts. One, Mark Hackle has said the words, we already have regional transit. It's smart. So that's the line that he kind of is. And the reality is that, and there's a number of people in the suburbs who also feel that way. The challenge with that is that the level that people are willing to fund smart is nowhere near the level to get anything done, right? Like the problem with transit in Metro Detroit is we just don't pay for it. Like we don't give it enough money. It's starved. And so with resources, it could happen. And I think number two, and people aren't going to like this. Some people are going to like it. Some people aren't. But because we are so allergic to certain regional taxes and because you're not going to see a sale, like you can't do a sales tax here. for certain things. It's not allowed in the state of Michigan. You're going to see more of a public-private partnership where, like with the Q line, you had the foundation community and private community in some ways pony up the dollars for then the federal matching. I think we're going to see more of that. I know that a lot of people are very reticent about taking private money for this, but that isn't how our funding culture works. We've got 3, probably 2 counties that we have to deal with, maybe 3 because if you count Washtenaw.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to be a creative way to get there. I mean, let's not forget the Q line is now funded with like tourism taxes. And I think that those are the kinds of things that you're going to see big moves, but I don't know if there's the appetite for more than what we're paying. So that gap's going to have to get there somehow. But if we don't make up that gap, we will continue to fall behind. If you look at the article about this summit, there was a couple other news outlets about it. That talent attraction is the number one thing. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but like that road episode, and we're going to wait for some more feedback. We've already got some interesting ones, but like that electric road episode, you can tell the difference between, well, this is the way we've always done it versus, hey, like we need to do experiments and things to try to build more pie or bake more pie and create more opportunities. And I really worry that if we don't have the ability to look forward, we will always be stuck behind.
Yeah, completely agree, Jared. How this gets done is going to be tricky. It's going to take some private investment. And I think that some of the larger companies are understanding that, and that, this is a talent attraction play. This is, they need employees to get to and from places as they want them to be in the office more as we go forward. But also don't expect this to be a ballot measure again. I don't think we're going to see what we saw in 2016.
Oh,
where
really?
This is, no, I don't think this is on the ballot type of thing. I think that was proven not to be maybe the successful way to go about it. And you don't need to go about it that way, frankly. There's ARPA dollars, there's government dollars that you can appropriate to this sort of thing. So I think it'll happen more so through the legislator that already exists. And I don't want to be political, but I will say that, if Democrats are able to keep a majority in the state, there's just no other way of saying that they are much more fond of mass transit and funding that. So I would say that, I think this can get done through the legislature as long as there's kind of Democratic control, for that purpose. If nothing else, they will at least prioritize this much more than a Republican-led legislature would.
If it's a Republican legislature in either side of the, just forget about it. Like it's just
Right.
not going to happen. Like, and I don't mean that as it just is what it is.
It is. No, if you're a Republican listening and you are a really big proponent of mass transit, I think you're an outlier in your party.
Yeah. Before we go, I want to mention that I'm actually going to be moderating a panel at the MichAuto Summit next week. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, something that you can check out. It is actually about finding your future in Michigan. I'm going to be talking with some interesting people. They're doing some cool stuff around like, hey, let's using the tools we have, not, obviously we just talked about trans and things like that, but using the tools we already have and the opportunities we already have, to really make progress. And so that's going to be a fun thing that I'm doing. I'm looking forward to the opportunity on Tuesday. It runs from 11 to 4. It's at One Campus Marshes. So if you want to check it out, I'll put a link in the show notes. It is a paid event for members and stuff like that for MichAuto, but I just wanted to make sure to mention it, that it's good to be able to get the word out to different groups.
Yeah, it'll be a great event. It always is. The summit is kind of a really interesting place to kind of learn about what's going on in transportation and mobility in the industry. A lot of industry experts. So that should be really cool. Glad you're a part of it, Jarrett, and I can't wait to hear the conversation and the maybe the ideas and strategies that come out of it.
All right. With that, we are done for today and the week, Devon O'Reilly.
Yes, Jarrett. Well, stay warm. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Noel Night. I'll be out in the city myself for a couple different times throughout the weekend, so I'm going to enjoy it as well.
I want to thank people behind the scenes, Cheyenne Noserini for editing some of these episodes, engineer Randy Walker, he has come through in huge ways for the studio project and other things, Norris Howard, Fletcher Sharp, everyone, of course, our members, patreon.com/Daily Detroit. With you, all things are possible. With that, I am Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.